In this episode of the Video Dojang classroom, we're going to talk about a simple way of constructing the 8 trigrams in order. We're going to be using a tree diagram, which is a statistical tool for constructing the sample space of an experiment. The way a tree diagram works is we start with a dot. And then we move over slightly to the right, as if we are in invisible columns. And once we move over, we are going to list out all the possible outcomes for the first item we're dealing with. In this case, we're not dealing with quarters or dice like we might be in statistics and basic probability. We're dealing with the lines of the trigram. So the first line of the trigram has 2 possibilities. It can be a solid line or a dashed line. Once we list those out, then we draw a line from our dot to the items we just listed. Next, we put dots next to the items that we just listed. And we move over to the next invisible column. Now we're going to list all the possible outcomes for the second item, in this case, the second line of the trigram, next to each dot. So just like before, I would have a solid line and a dashed line. And I do this for each dot. Then I draw lines from the dots to these new items. And I put dots next to them. Now I list all the possible outcomes for the third item, which would be the third line of the trigram, next to each of these dots. And as before, I have 2 possibilities. I have a solid line and a dashed line. A solid line and a dashed line. A solid line and a dashed line. And a solid line and a dashed line. Now I connect those with their dots. And I'm finished. At this point, I can actually write out all 8 trigrams in order by simply going through all the branches of this tree diagram. And the way we do this is like this. We start, traditionally in statistics, we would start from the left and go right to construct a sample space. That's typically how it's done. But for us, in order to get the trigrams in the correct order, we're going to start from the right and move our way to the left. So if we look at the top branch, we have solid, solid, solid. So we write that out. Then the second branch, we have dashed, solid, solid. And we write that out. And so on. The next one would be solid. So hold on, let me get rid of that. This is what I want. Would be solid, dashed, solid. Then dashed, dashed, solid. Solid, solid, dashed. Dashed, solid, dashed. Solid, dashed, dashed. And dashed, dashed, dashed. And these are all 8 trigrams in the order from heaven to earth. See you next time on Video Dojang Classroom.